Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hosts Melanie Johnson and Jenn Foster are the owners of Elite Online Publishing. They're both Wall Street Journal, USA Today best-selling authors. We're really glad you're here because this podcast was designed for you. Meet industry experts that share their secrets and strategies. Get successful results for your business in money, relationships, health, and your life. Each episode is going to inspire you to take action towards reaching your greatness.
Hey everyone, this is Melanie Johnson. Welcome for another great podcast. I'm here with my business partner, Jenn Foster. Hey, Jenn.
Hey everyone, how's it going today?
It seems like it's a great day. I have one of the most special people that we have worked with on the show today, James McEachin. He is phenomenal. He is 91 years old and he has written this book, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. It is his memoir. I can't get enough of it. It's just the story of his life is amazing. James, thanks for coming today. We're so happy to have you here.
My honor, and thank you for inviting me to be here.
I mean, James is a veteran. He's been a policeman. He's been a fireman. He's been a music writer, producer. He has been an actor. He's worked with Clint Eastwood and some of the top names in the business. What a life you've had, James. So, James, tell us a little bit of the highlights of how you transitioned from being in the military. Actually, tell me one of your favorite stories from the Korean War. Let's start with that.
Well, the most significant story, I believe, was when which I don't like to go through, but I will if you want, if you must. That was when I was wounded and came very, very close to not making it as a human being because I had been wounded in the liver and in the spleen. Mm. And I had 4 different areas of where the wounds were, and I didn't understand why and how, etc. And then I was challenged by this blonde-haired boy who saved my life, and I didn't get his name, but that's a part of the story. In order to get mine, but I couldn't understand why was I hurt in a couple of different places. I mean, one shot should have been sufficient. But what happened was that I went back. I didn't know this until a couple of weeks ago, but I went back to save my lieutenant who was in charge of the patrol. And the Chinese just riddled his area with bullets. And but I went to try to save him. And obviously I didn't. And then before you know it, I was flown back to the hospital in Japan, and they did all the operations, etc. And then I got out of the hospital. When I got out of the hospital, I went back to the front line because I felt that I had a little bit more to do. Well, that's how I believe. That's why the flakes of metal are still in my stomach, and they've been that way for 50 years or whatever length of period of time the 50s were.
That's amazing that you've lived with that, and you're 91, almost 92 years old. The courage that you had to do that, and then you came back home, and then you still wanted to be a man in uniform. And went on to become a police officer. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, after I got wounded, the surprising thing about that is that despite having been wounded the way I was, the 4 different places, 2 of the bullet in the thigh and I think it was a hand grenade in the stomach rather than a bullet, but whatever. And I think the flakes of metal that was still there for all of this time was... Well, it wasn't very pleasant. Yeah. But your question, I didn't. So when I got out of the Army, because it was my second enlistment, I had to find something to do, and so I had always admired the uniform, always, the long as I can remember. who else would have a uniform on but a policeman and a fireman? So that we had in New Jersey, where I returned to home. I was living in New Jersey at the time, and the civil service was having this test, and I wasn't doing anything, just enjoying the weather, so to speak, and I decided I'd go back in the Army. So I re-enlisted. I didn't think that they would take me because of the wounds, and then plus the fact when I was a kid, I swallowed lye, and I thought that would hold me out, but it didn't hold me out of service the first time, so I didn't do it this time. So I passed, but now I had more disabilities, right? And obviously I didn't say anything to anybody about it, but so when I took the fireman's the test, the only drawback that I had was that one time we had a 40-foot ladder, and you're supposed to jump off that ladder as part of your training. And I think psychologically something snapped. I said, I'm not going to do this. And but I just forced myself into doing it. And well, you know what? I passed the fireman's exam. What was interesting about that is that the chief of the fire department, believe it or not, and I'm not just saying this you're going on a different track, but in New Jersey, they just didn't want any black firemen on the fire department. Now you can go, I don't know whether you go to Newark or go anywhere you want to go in this country. Those old time firemen will tell you, no, they didn't want me on the department. Well, they didn't want me on the fire department. But I came out first on the civil service examination, and so they couldn't make any appointments until they could certify me as a policeman. I'm sorry, as a fireman. Well, I made it on the fire department, but that night the chief, when the test came out in the papers that I had passed the test, the chief came around to my aunt's house where I was living, and they said, you don't really want to be a fireman, do you? I said, of course I want to be a fireman. I didn't say I've been dreaming about fires all my life, because that didn't want to sound too well, that would have been an unwelcoming thought. So I said, no, Chief, I know what you're doing, but I'm going to make it on the Hackensack Fire Department. They only had one black on there, and he was a temporary. Mm. If I had made it on there, then I would have been permanent, because it was a civil service exam. So I took it, obviously, to repeat myself, I passed it, and they had to make the appointments. And then the paper said the Hackensack fireman gives up the hose for a whistle, or some corny article. So one day we had a fireman over at the Priscilla's Everglades. I wouldn't forget that, because that was the first real fire that we had. And I just didn't like it on the fire department. First of all, it was too boring, and it was a tad cold. Mm-hmm. In fact, it was freezing, and then fire can be a pretty commanding thing. So I resigned the fire department and went on the police department, and there I stayed for about 3 years, I think it was.
That's awesome. And then what brought you to California? How did you move to California?
Well, I came to California because of the fact that my wounds started acting up again. I had tuberculosis, believe it or not, and because my lung was, I had to have a lobectomy performed on me, and so, well, if you got to get operated on, why not make it during nice weather, not this freezing cold? Because I was a foot patrolman, and on the fire department. But I skipped over something, and you got to forgive my mind, because when I go back to those days, that they're quite scary, But there was something I wanted. Before you asked the question, what brought me to California, was the fact. I started bleeding in the tuberculosis because I had drank that filthy, stinking, crappy water over in Korea, and that it just bacteria just had kind of made a holiday out of my stomach, and so I was walking the beat one night, early one morning, and just felt like collapsing. So I called headquarters and said, "Listen, I was a foot patrolman. You've got to send somebody down here to pick me up. I just can't make it." Which was really saying something. A guy like me who tried to do everything, you're admitting that you can't make it. So they took me to the doctor's office. He immediately, "You have got to go to the hospital right now." So 105 took me to the hospital, and there I stayed for a while, and then I left the hospital because I didn't want to have the operation, because they had, at the time, they had lung operations were just practically disastrous, because you see these guys walking around with these broken, the ribs, where they used to go in and do the operating, and it was just horrid, and I didn't want that. So I left and caught the train, came out here, called my girlfriend, told her I was leaving town. "What, anything I do?" "No, you're wonderful work. I'll send for you," and which I did later on, about a year later. So I came out here to California to take the operation, the lobectomy. And then I taught myself how to more or less walk erect again, and everything was fine. Then I accidentally, I was listening to the radio one day. I sent for my girlfriend. She came out, and we got married later on, whatever. What happened was that I told her that we were going to stay in California, and she was a magnificent woman. God, what I certainly didn't deserve her. She was just a wholesome girl, never went into a bar, and I practically lived in the damn things. So God pulled me through that operation, and huge cut in the back of going from here all the way there, because they had to bring the lung out to operate on it. And so that came through that successfully. And then there's this matter, you got to get a job. Where you going? You're going to stay here? What are you going to do? So one day I was sitting there at the house that I had rented, and this guy singing on television, singing this very infectious tune. And I said, and people were dancing and all that stuff. I had to ask my wife, what is that they're doing? She said, that's I think it wasn't a Dick Clark show, but it was some show like the Dick Clark show where everybody would be dancing and whatever. And she said, and I know, "What's that song?" And she said, "Well, that's, they play all the new records and all of that stuff." Because I was a little dumb, and I don't forget, I was essentially raised in Japan, so I didn't really know what was happening in America, or what was kosher and what wasn't. And so she said, and the guy that was singing, back to my wife, back to the guy that was singing this song, Fats Domino or somebody, I can't remember who it was at the time. So I said, "I can do that." And my wife said, "Oh, really? You can?" Yeah, I can write what he wrote. And so she got a pencil and a piece of paper. Do it. And I swear to you, I did. And I wrote the song, or as I write in my memoir. What the hell was it now? Woke up this morning and I heard the news. Shooting at the moon, they're trying to blow out the fuse. It's getting rough. Yes, it's tough enough. Very naively, I went down to Hollywood. I was living in Pacoima. We were living in Pacoima at the time. And I knocked on a few doors and found out that what you had to do to sell a song. And there was this guy, a nice guy by the name of Bob Keene. He opened his office door, let me in, and he said, "Now, what can I do?" And I said, "I just wrote this song." And he said, "Really? Where are you from?" And all that kind of stuff. Very friendly guy. And the guy is still alive a couple of years ago. he had written. What attracted me to that office was the fact he had Richard, what's his name, La Bamba, Richie Valens.
Mhm.
And if I can, he can do that and be successful with it on television, I can do what I'm doing and do the same thing. So I wrote a song, and Bob Keane bought the song from me for $25. My first time out for 25. Yeah, you know. So I took it and I stayed in the music business and for 3 or 4 years, maybe, or whatever. Got bored and tired with it, and one day I said it to everybody I was quitting. But what had happened, I got a job as an A&R man. A&R means artist and repertoire. And I recorded a guy. I had a group called the Furies, and they did a song called Sing With the String of My Heart, which was a moderate hit, but was enough to get me notoriety. And noticed as somebody can do the R&B, rhythm and blues type things. And then one day a guy came by my house, or my apartment, saying that he could sing, and he was escorted by a friend of his. And they said, "You want to hear this guy sing? This guy, oh, he's awesome, you know." So I said, "Let me hear you." So he pulled out a couple of tunes from his memory and started singing. I said, "This guy is, honest to God, a talent." And I said, "I'm going to record you." And I did. His name was Otis Redding.
Wow.
He had never recorded before, and I was the first. And in any book you'll see that I was the first to record him. And then Otis left. I still had the Furies, but we did a couple of records, and none of them made it. Then what happened after that? I just didn't like the music business because it was a terrible, horrible, cheap. Somebody's always robbing somebody out of something. And I had a couple of friends in the business. One of them was Sonny Bono of Sonny and Cher, and then he got out of the music and went into politics, if you remember back in the day.
Yep.
So I so helped me out. One day I'm walking down the Melrose Avenue, and guy is approaching in the opposite direction. Looked at me and he said, "Ain't you an actor? You know, do you want to be an actor?" No, are you kidding? I don't know a thing about that, right? He said, "Well, you look just like the guy that I wrote in my book, my screenplay. You could be his twin brother. You look just like him." And I swear to you, this is a true story. It's been verified. I don't know how many times. The guy, I followed him up to this office on Melrose Avenue, across the street from Paramount Studios. And he introduced me to this guy called, what's his name? He ended up producing and he ended up directing. Ted V. Michaels, he was the director. So we started talking. We talked so long. The guy finally gave me a script, and he says, "Why don't you take this script and read it, and come back, and we're going to put you in this movie." Well, that was too unbelievable. Well, I did that, and sure enough, a couple of weeks passed by. I'm doing a lot of editing as I talk to you about this. Sure enough, the guy calls my house, and he says, "Hey, what are you going to do about this movie? Aren't you supposed to come back? Call me." And I had forgotten about the thing. He said, "You were supposed to call me because we start shooting next week, or no, I think we start shooting tomorrow or something like that." And so he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, my wife was in the kitchen. I said, "Hey, hon, there's this guy here, Kook, want me to be in his movie." She said, "You bombed out and everything else. You might as well try it." So I said, "Okay." And that's how I got in the movie business. Well, he was good. So he was just anxious to get his movie made. He couldn't care less. And then I really didn't know what I was doing. I ran into a guy called Max Julian, and we ended up being kind of friendly. And I did what do you do? I'm in the music. And he said, I am too, man, but I'm an actor. I'm really an actor. And he acted as though it was a big time thing to be an actor. So I said, well, I've got this movie role that this guy's offering me to it. And really? Yeah. What is it? What's the name of it? Now I forgot the name of it. The Klansman. It's called The Klansman. But what was the name? We shot it under a different name, but whatever it was, I was in it. Problem was, I had never ever in my life been even close to a camera before or shooting a scene. I knew nothing about that. You had to learn the dialogue and you had to get the over the shoulder and this and all this technical jargon. When we got on location down in Bakersfield, the director was trying to map out the shot, and he said, you do here such and such a thing. Now, what are you supposed to say? Obviously, the picture didn't cost more than $1.98 to shoot. It was the cheapest production anybody could have found. So I finally figured out logic says the guy does this, he does that. And Ted, he's got so many other problems, he can't give me any individual attention. Mm-hmm. But he was sorry. I know he was sorry he hired me to begin with. And before you know it, well, we shot the scene, and then it worked. And then I had developed another credit, which was as outrageous as that story there with Ted Michaels. We had a screening of that movie. Oh, the name of the movie was I Crossed the Color Line. That's what it was. I Crossed the Color Line, about somebody that the one that hit this guy and his partner go down to look for this white girl who moved in with a black girl, all that silliness. So one day an agent saw it. And I remember him pulling over in his car. I saw you in that movie, man. You know, you were good. Well, something like that. Really? I didn't even know the movie would come out and and all that stuff. So finally, the guy wanted me to, let's talk. Now, you got to be careful in Hollywood with people like that because, you know, all motives aren't honorable. And so I had my fist ball up, ready to punch a guy in the mouth. Same thing as the guy who saw me on the sidewalk a few days before. You got to be ready. I learned that much from being in the Army, you know. So we got the talking, and this guy's name, he said his name was Alan, and he was an agent. Okay. So he said, I think I can find you a part in a movie. So I said, well, great, you know. So sure enough, he calls me about a week later. Hey, I got an interview for you over at Paramount Studios. They're doing a picture with John Wayne. Now, if you watch your P's and Q's, you get that interview, they're late in shooting, and you can just walk right through the door with the part. Boom, did everything I was supposed to do and show up for the interview with casting, which I didn't know what casting was all about. I didn't know any of that stuff. So finally, I said to, tell me he gave me what to look out for and all of that stuff. So eventually, he drove me over to Paramount Studios, Alan Corey, and we walked on the stage, and he looked over there, and he sees two guys sitting in a chair. One guy in the director's chair, something like, it's a director's chair, only they're taller. So Alan says, listen, that is Henry Hathaway. That didn't mean anything to me. Henry Hathaway, what does that mean? He said, he's the director. Oh, okay. So he says, tell him that you're here to see about the part, about the court clerk to the hanging judge. Court clerk to the hanging judge. Court clerk, hanging judge. Okay. So I go down to the front because he stayed back there because he's not supposed to be on stage. And he said, Henry Hathaway. And then Henry Hathaway, he's chewing on the cigar, turns around and he looks at me. What do you want here? I said, my agent told me that you were needing an actor for a movie for this movie that you all are doing. He said, "Can you act?" I said, "Well, I'm probably better than anybody you got on this stage here." The guy he's talking to turned around and said, "Hi, the son of a bitch, Henry," and that was John Wayne, and that's how we became friends.
That's so great. That's so great.
And when he was a magnificent guy, because Gene had this terrible reputation about being a racist and all that stuff there. I thought the guy was incredible. I thought he was great. And so so from then on, things went my way for the first year. And then when I really got serious about acting, I really didn't want to do it that much.
But you did like over 200 TV shows and
I don't know if I did 200. I know it's pretty close to 200. So it could have. Oh yeah. Well, I found out that there was an art to getting the job. Most young actors, they come in and they fidgeting a while, or they're going to learn the Stanislavski system. They learn that. Well, that's not going to get you anywhere but through the front door. You got to walk in, and you got to take the job. You can't just want to be Ernie Borgnine or be this guy. Yeah, you got to be you, but show them that, be assertive enough to say, "I am probably the best thing you got here," and let them know that there's room for your director to make his suggestions and all that stuff. And that's what it did. But every time, and there weren't that many opportunities for black actors during those early years at all. I mean, about 3 or 4 guys, and then there was so much jealousy that they wouldn't give you time of day. So the New Yorkers and the New York actors thought they were better than, thought they were God's gift to mankind. And so they wouldn't pay any attention, which means that gives you more room to walk in the room and do what you want to do.
Yeah.
There was a role that it was called The Good Guys, and the agent called me and said, "Listen, Jimmy, what you got to do is you got to win this role. You got to get this role, because if you don't, nobody's going to want to use you. But if you go over there, it's for CBS. CBS haven't been hiring the minorities. If you go in and knock them dead, they're going to always call you." So I said, "How can I win this role? How can I beat this role?" It was Herb. Bob, you remember Bob Denver? He had some show about the island, about these guys who were stranded on this island. It was a very popular show at one
Gilligan's
time.
Island? Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island. Yeah, there you go. Oh, we know what she's watching. Yeah, but that's what it was. So I said, I got to get this role. And so I just did everything I could think of to win it over. And when it came time to audition, I would walk in the room and pretend that I had spent the night playing cards with these guys that they were inside. I heard them laughing, so I knew the first thing I should do is try to get them in to laugh when I walked through the door, which is what I did. Now the black actors that were there, waiting for you to go in for your for your appointment, to be seen and to read.
Yep.
Well, I just decided that there's no way some of those guys, Raymond St. Jacques, there's no way I'm going to beat him. He's got the name, he's got the stature, he's got this. And so when my time came to go into the office, past the secretary and to the producer, where the producer and the director was, I said, I think this is a great script. Da 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 da. But I did it in such a way that these guys, how do you know so much about the script? That's the secret. So I kept that shucking and jive routine going all the way through the interview. Before you know it, when I walked out there, I knew I had the job, because, and then the girl said, as I was leaving, the secretary, she said something flippant. And I just said, well, man's got to eat. You do what you possibly could do. And so that's what it was. That's how I got that show.
I love that. So you had a charisma and confidence, right? That's what got you the job.
Got to use it. You got to do it. 98% of the auditions that I went on, I got the job.
Wow.
All of them, were you more than whomever it was,
Well, you had so many great TV shows, Tenafly and Matlock, Perry Mason. You've been on so many great, the Rockford Files, so many great TV shows and movies.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have anything else to do but to, but acting really got on my nerves. I mean, it's not on my nerves. It's just something like it was too pretentious and all that nonsense and everything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say we just love your memoir, and you've done so many great things. Even the one man play that you just did a few years ago. So wonderful.
And the general who brought me overseas to do it, well, I believe very fervently in veterans causes. He called me yesterday. I was really shocked. I was just blown away that he would take time. This is a 4-star general. When I was in the Army, if I could speak to a one-stripe corporal or something, I would have been in Clover. But he wanted me to go because he knew that I could entertain the troops and all that stuff there. And so I was fortunate enough to run into him. And then, it's just, but acting got a little tough. And I think there are a lot of surprises in it. What the average person doesn't know is just how influential the actor, how influential they can be influenced by the actor. If you say, for instance, I could have worked with this guy or that guy, but if you say you work with Clint Eastwood is a better example. Mm-hmm. When I do 3 movies with Clint or something like that. We did and we were going to do the other one, but the girl that wrote that original screenplay of Misty, she died, which is why we never did the sequel to that. And she was a nice girl. And most actors I find that I'm just trying to go over some of the guys. Most of the guys always got something to bitch and moan about, I mean, you're making all this money for doing practically nothing, and you got a complaint. It doesn't exactly sit well.
Yeah. Well, James, you have had, like you say, a life well lived and a country well served with your lifetime. I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you and how much we've appreciated working with you. And so glad you've been able to tell this story and your memoir. Make sure you pick up the book. Swing Low, My Sweet Chariot, the ballad of Jimmy Mack. If you can see it on my screen there. It's available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. Thank you, James, for coming today. I just adore you and loved you from the moment you called and we started working together. It's just been a wonderful journey, and thanks for sharing it with us.
You guys are just tremendous. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, that's it for this podcast. Remember to subscribe. And if you're looking to write your memoir or your book, reach out to us at Elite Online Publishing. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks, James.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.